Here's the memo obtained tonight by MSNBC's Ryan Riley. Quote, colleagues, we understand there's a lot of media reporting and rumors surrounding potential changes at the FBI. This includes reporting and rumors about actions that very seriously impact our workforce. Consistent with our commitment to share information with you as we receive it, Acting Deputy Director Kassane and I want to provide you with an update. Late this afternoon, I received a memo from the Acting Deputy Attorney General notifying me that 8 senior FBI executives are to be terminated by specific dates unless these employees have retired beforehand. So 8 of them will be out unless they quit. Quote, I have been personally in touch with each of these impacted employees. The memo also directs me to provide by noon on Tuesday the following, quote, all current and former FBI personnel assigned at any time to investigations and or prosecutions relating to events that occurred at or near the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. And also, secondly, United States versus Haniyeh, which is, I believe, a case about Hamas and the October 7th attack. They want a list of all current and former FBI personnel assigned at any time to investigations or prosecutions related to January 6th or that one Hamas case. Quote, these lists should include relevant supervisory personnel in FBI regional offices and field divisions, as well as FBI headquarters. For each employee included in the list, provide the current title, office to which the person is assigned, role in the investigation or prosecution, and date of last activity relating to the investigation or prosecution. Upon timely receipt of the requested information, the Office of the Deputy Attorney General will commence a review process to determine whether additional personnel actions are necessary. The acting director of the FBI then tells personnel at the FBI, quote, we understand that this request encompasses thousands of FBI employees across the country who have supported these investigative efforts. I am one of those employees, as is acting Deputy Director Kassane. As we have said since the moment we agreed to take on these roles, meaning the acting director and acting deputy director of the FBI, we are going to follow the law, follow FBI policy, and do what is in the best interest of the workforce and the American people always. We will be back in touch with more information as soon as we can. In the meantime, stay safe and take care of each other. Brian J. Driscoll Jr., acting director.
This past Monday, interim U.S. Attorney Martin issued an email to the entire office stating as much. He said that there would be an internal investigation into our office and specifically the January 6th prosecutors' charging decisions with respect to charging certain violators, or rather certain January 6th defendants with violations of 18 U.S. Code 1512, which is the statute that the Supreme Court ultimately ruled in United States versus Fisher, or rather Fisher versus United States, did not apply to the January 6th riots. So we know there's at least some amount of investigation ongoing. Whether or not that is criminal, civil, or merely internal, I can't say.
As former Trump defense lawyer Emil Beauvais at the Justice Department, possibly on orders from the White House, has demanded a list of every single FBI agent in the entire country who worked on any January 6th case in any capacity at all. And even though that includes the new acting director and the new acting deputy director who Trump himself just ham-handedly accidentally appointed, they say the reason they want that list is because they're going to review it for potential personnel action against all those agents. Does this fundamentally change who we are as a country if FBI and Justice Department prosecutors, FBI officials and Justice Department prosecutors have now had their careers threatened and in some cases ended, specifically because they worked on lawful cases that didn't please the president? Have we already sort of crossed a Rubicon in terms of who we are as a country and what the rule of law is in the United States of America?
Absolutely. That's what's happening. I mean, the cruelty of it is this wonderfully young prosecutor, idealistic, is gone, right? The second thing is that it's clear that it's, quote, my Justice Department, as the president called it. That brings us back to the days when it was J. Edgar Hoover, but instead of J. Edgar Hoover going after Martin Luther King or even the John Birch Society for political reasons, it's Donald Trump doing it to use the Justice Department or the FBI to exact retribution or pursue political enemies. But I got to say, there is a responsibility that we have in the United States Senate as an independent institution to cry foul here. And I really am hoping that my Republican colleagues, who many of whom I have great respect for, see that this is no game anymore. I mean, what the president did with this impoundment, he has no authority to do. What he's doing with the purging of the FBI is showing that he is deadly serious. And I think there was a lot of wishful thinking on a lot of folks that the Trump agenda would be different than it was. But he's made it clear, lawlessness and cruelty, he will use both of those to take care of his need for retribution, but also to privilege the Elon Musk of the world. And there's only a few of them, but those are the ones who are in charge. And by the way, there was an Elon Musk SpaceX person over there at the Justice Department. And is he going to be looking over Kash Patel's shoulder in the purge?
Saturday, 1 February, year of our Lord 2025. You're in the war room on another workday. You saw Senator Welch right there. Impoundment, and removal of billets and programs, but really billets in this case. President Trump, the deconstruction of the administrative state is full bore. And the question I have for Rachel Maddow on the MSNBC team and in the all these defenders of the American Gestapo, we've called them that, for 2 or 3 years now. Did you honestly think, let me get this right, did you honestly think that you were going to use Gestapo-like tactics against the American people, and you were going to kick down doors, and you were going to terrorize families, school board meetings, and you're going to terrorize families of the people praying the rosary outside of these abortion mills, and that you were going to terrorize, because that's what you tried to do, terrorize Trump supporters and MAGA supporters, have the largest quote-unquote criminal investigation in your history that dwarfed anything about the anti-war movement during the 60s, different than anything about finding the communist infiltration in our country in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, anything regarding radical Islamic jihad, which you missed in the 80s and 90s, and then after 9/11. All of these things, all these major moments of infiltration by our enemies, and the largest was going to be against the MAGA movement and American citizens, and you would throw in the Right to Life movement. You would throw in really which was the beginning of MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, which was really the school board meetings and the awakening of the American mom to what was going on in the schools. Do you honestly think that would all be done and you would trample on civil rights and human rights and destroy people and bankrupt people and have people commit suicide and feel like they were othered, they were not part of their country anymore? Do you honestly think that that was going to happen and there would be no accountability? Is that what you thought? This is not the Republican Party. There's all kind of, language has to get precise, I think, if you want to understand this historic moment. You can't talk about Republicans and Democrats anymore. That's a label that's meaningless. It's meaningless. The Republican Party and the quote-unquote, limited government conservative, and I realize a lot of you people used to be limited government conservatives, maybe some of you are, but limited government conservative and constitutional conservative, year after year, cycle after cycle, you put people back in. And what happened? They shredded the Constitution. And the controlled opposition of the Republican Party and the limited government conservative movement just sat there and either were okay with it, work with it, got along with it, but they never opposed it. They might have sat there and made some speeches and sent some angry letters, but that's not opposing it. That's not opposing it. This is an apparatus that is running the most powerful nation on earth, and they're not going to give it up. Why do you think in those 4 years, what they did to Trump in the first term was horrendous? But look what they did to Trump after they stole the 2020 election. After they stole the 2020 election. They're like the Praetorian Guard. They choose who runs the empire. And the, kind of the Spartacus guys weren't destroyed. It was a resilience. And so now President Trump is back and we're in charge. President Trump's in charge. To show you his commitment and focus and determination. And like I say, when you look at Days of Thunder, you have to have three scales: scale, depth, and urgency. Scale, the scale of it, the depth of it, every vertical, the scale of it, of all the verticals, the whole waterfront of everything that has impacted the country, everything that's taken away, destroyed the constitutional republic, that has destroyed our sovereignty, our territorial integrity, our citizens, all of it. From Geneva and the World Health Institute to where money's going all over the world, to the southern border, to Latin America, to Canada, to the Arctic, to Ukraine, to Beijing, to Tehran, the capitals of Europe, to Los Angeles, to Chicago, everywhere, the scale of it. It's everything all together. I think I know this pretty well because we've been working on it, I don't know, for 10 years of my life, but for the last 4 years specifically, very detailed on the return. You've been on the show. You follow the show. Those of you who came in and after the election, so many people come up to you, you gave us hope. You gave us hope. Well, we weren't happy talking to you. We said, here's how we do it. Here's how we do it. And this is the political part with the starts the precinct strategy and rebuilds confidence. And you start with the American Policy Institute and the Peter Navarro books and Project 25, and you build up verticals in policy and also teams and cadres and a vanguard of a cadre. That's a revolutionary movement. And now the scale of it is breathtaking. And I say that someone knows a little bit about this. It's breathtaking. The depth of it is breathtaking. But the most impressive thing is the urgency of it. President Trump is acting in that saying, there are decades that nothing happens, and then there's weeks that decades happen. These are the weeks of Donald John Trump in 47. This is why it's the age of Trump. And they sit there. Do you honestly think we're going to let the Gestapo get away with it? You know, was it Quentin Tarantino? These guys in Hollywood, they write these fantasy movies. What they would do to the Nazis, all these fantasy movies, that wasn't done to the Nazis, all these fantasy movies, like little 9-year-old boys. Let's have a fantasy movie. We're actually doing it. What you saw yesterday was nothing short of magnificent. Nothing short of magnificent. And for those of you on the receiving end of this, the blunt force instrument that leaves blunt force trauma, you did this to yourselves. You brought this on yourselves. Action reveals character. You revealed your character over many years because you thought you were untouchable. You thought you were impervious to all this. You treated people like garbage. You destroyed people. You destroyed families. You tried to destroy movements. You wanted to put Trump, in this aspect of it, in prison for 300 years. You wanted him to die in a federal prison. Let me repeat this. You wanted him to die in a federal prison. Haven't been to a federal prison? It's quite easy to die in a federal prison. You wanted him to die in a federal prison.
And so you have to look at these things in totality. And she said, look, when it comes to the question of pardons.
But hang on, Jack, hang on, slow down, hang on. I want to go back to Snowden because there are some people who may have not followed it. He hadn't been mentioned in a long time. They went off the chain on Snowden. Not because of what Snowden did. They went off the chain with Snowden because he exposed how they were spying on the American people and they couldn't lie about it anymore, right? This is why they want him tried for treason. This is why they want him executed. You can see the deep state. Go ahead, sir.
I have to point out I would call it ironic if it was ironic, because it's not hypocrisy, it's the two-tiered. So what Snowden exposed was the fact that Clapper and Brennan both lied in their testimony to that very committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, regarding the warrantless wiretapping on American citizens. And they were never prosecuted for that ever. Meanwhile, Stephen K. Bannon had to spend 4 months in a federal correctional institute for essentially a similar crime where they claimed that you refused a subpoena. So they actually went up there and lied. No problem with that whatsoever. Snowden exposes that. There's never been any repercussions for them. By the way, don't recall Brennan and Clapper getting pardons. Just saying. Don't recall them ever getting pardons. Not sure what the statute of limitations for perjury to the United States Senate is, but there's things that are going to be under review. And that was the big reason that they themselves exposed. The dog that's not barking is, if you're so upset about Snowden, wouldn't you also be so upset about the intel directors lying to your faces? Or what if, Steve, the dirty little secret is they knew about the wiretapping program all along, because they were the ones that were read into it and they were the ones who signed off on it. And what they're really upset about is that the American people found out about it. That's the real problem here, not this nonsense about, you got to say this. You guys, they were saying, by the way, who was the one? I think it was Bennett, by the way. He said, I noticed that Snowden was out there in Hawaii for a little while. Was he at your house? Were you harboring him? Was he meeting with you? It's just, I've never met the guy. I've never met the guy, never talked to his lawyers, any of that stuff. But he's trying to make all of this nonsense to say, because everybody in Hawaii knows each other. Apparently, you're hanging out on Roseanne's pineapple farm together, I guess, and it's a complete joke. It's a complete farce. They are exposed. It's not just that Snowden exposed the program. He exposed the farce that has been this Senate Intel Committee for so long. And Tulsi Gabbard coming in there and saying, look, sure, we can find ways to fix the process, but the underlying truth that was revealed was so much more important to the American people that you can't sit here and say that I'm going to come in as a reformer if I'm going to continue business as usual. That's the trap that they were trying to lay for her. And unfortunately, you got these guys like Langford from Oklahoma, and by the way, Todd Young from Indiana playing his, I'm the last Boy Scout, I'm holier than thou, I'm the only one who cares about the, it's like James Comey all over again. Now, I'm the last bishop, the cardinal, whatever they want to call himself. And he wants to run around up there saying, I'm the only one who truly defends the Constitution, while letting these agencies completely run amok of the rights of the American people.
Jack, before we lose you, two more things I want to hit is real quickly. Why is it imperative for this audience to put a shoulder to the wheel to get Tulsi over the top, in your opinion?
Well, there's two reasons, right? Number one, it's because this was the choice of President Trump. President Trump's nominees must get across. We saw what happened with Matt Gaetz. When they turfed out Matt Gaetz, when they bounced him, that was the old guard coming in and reasserting their weight that they have in Washington. At the end of the day, we can't allow those people a foot in the door. We are doing the work of saving the republic. We are saving the American project from complete implosion and complete destruction. We saw the road that we were on to full-on communism. So these moves that are being made with President Trump at the helm, these are the moves that he has designed to save America. And so if you want to actually do that, then you must support his nominees all the way through. Number two, Tulsi Gabbard, if they bounce her, which I don't think is going to happen, by the way, but hypothetically, I'll play devil's advocate here. If they were able to bounce her, then the next person you might get in there, it's going to be a company man. It's going to be someone who is, quote unquote, got the resume, someone who spent time in the intel community, someone who really knows the ropes, someone who's highly respected in Washington. The most dangerous words to any patriot's ears should be when someone is described as highly respected in Washington. That's the last thing you want to hear from anybody. As I say, yes, never trust anyone who doesn't have at least 2 hit pieces.
Jack, the whole Blackhawk situation, any updates on that? Any thoughts? I got Tage Girls going to join us in a second. Before I go to him, any thoughts on that? Any ideas?
Well, Steve, it's absolutely horrific, and I'm speaking to folks in the area. Even my wife, Tanya Tay, actually knew. Apparently, through her friend group, they had some connections to some of the people who were on the American Airlines flight that unfortunately passed away. You had children on board this thing. You had ice skaters. You had entire families in some cases. And so, look, at the end of the day, I understand that this family is looking for, with the name of this third pilot who was there, who was under evaluation. And I understand and respect, by the way, the service of their daughter, the service of their wife. I don't even know the exact makeup. But at the same time, the American people do deserve answers on this. We know the policy. Typically, even in Iraq and Afghanistan, when a soldier dies in the line of duty, you get the name within 24 hours. And so I can understand wanting to respect the service, and we do need to respect the service, but the American people also need to be respected. And the true story of what actually happened there absolutely has to come out. So we'll give the family the time that they need, but at the same time, there needs to be a full accounting of what really went on here. Was it DEI? Was it not DEI? Was it something in the air traffic control? Again, we need the facts so we can figure out and actually assign accountability. And as President Trump directed, by the way, we can't wait a year. We can't wait 3 years. We need it now.
Jack, there's all kind of talk around the White House. Don't know if it's happening, but there may be a bigger move on cutting funding for Ukraine. What's the latest on where we stand with President Trump moving a ceasefire, all of it, framework for getting out of there?
Look, I mentioned this yesterday on the show, but I'll throw it out again. With Denmark giving that green light on Nord Stream 2, that's the rumor going around Washington is that there may have been some phone calls going on behind the scenes regarding actually putting this thing to bed.
Jack Posobiec, where do we get you this weekend? Because